Imagine this. You fall asleep tonight, and somehow you wake up centuries later. You're millions of light years away, maybe on the shimmering edge of another galaxy. Sound like pure science fiction, right? Or maybe, well, depending on what you wake up to, maybe even a bit of a nightmare. Today, we're diving deep into this incredible kind of mind-bending idea of cryosleep. Suspended animation. It's been a staple in sci-fi forever, hasn't it? From classics like 2001, A Space Odyssey, Interstellar more recently. It always feels like this amazing concept, but, perpetually just out of reach. But what if it wasn't just fiction? What if, maybe one day, interstellar societies actually hammered out something like cryo accords? Like real treaties or pacts where sleeping across vast stretches of time becomes a normal, regulated way to do deep space travel, or even to navigate huge societal shifts back home. So this deep dive, we're asking the really big questions. Can biology actually be slowed down that much without, breaking it? How would we even survive centuries drifting through space? And what does that do to the very idea of society, maybe even an intergalactic one? What does it mean for us? So we're here to unpack the science behind cryogenic stasis, look at where we are now, the limits, and also the really deep ethical questions it brings up and how it might just reshape our whole future. Okay, so let's start with the biology. We need to unpack the realities of cryosleep. That's where it all starts, right? At its heart, cryogenic stasis is about cooling the human body way down sub-zero temperatures. The idea is to slow metabolism right down, maybe even stop it completely, but crucially without causing any damage to cells. Sounds simple enough when you say it like that, but the execution is, well, it's something else entirely. What are the really fundamental biological roadblocks here?
Oh, it's incredibly complex. And I think it's important to grasp why the successes we do have with cryopreservation are so different. Preserving sperm, eggs, embryos, even simpler tissues like skin or corneas.
Oh, right. We can do that now.
Exactly. But those are collections of individual cells or relatively simple tissues, a whole human body. With its brain, its complex organs, all interconnected, the complexity just scales up massively. It's not a linear problem at all.
Okay, so going from, say, an embryo to a full person, that's the giant leap. It's clearly way more than just making things cold.
Precisely. The main hurdles are pretty huge. First, you've got the problem of ice crystals forming inside and between cells. These aren't just like little icicles. They physically puncture delicate cell membranes.
Ouch.
Yeah. And they also draw water out, which causes this osmotic shock that can be lethal to cells. Second, the chemicals we use to prevent the ice, these cryoprotectants, are vital, but, in the high concentrations you need for a whole body, they can be pretty toxic themselves.
So the solution causes its own problems?
To some extent, yes. Finding that balance is key. And third, maybe the biggest challenge right now, is achieving uniform rewarming. If some parts of the body warm up faster than others, you get immense thermal stress, and that can just tear tissues apart.
Uniform rewarming, I hadn't even thought of that. But okay, despite these huge problems, you hear about breakthroughs, right? Things that give us some hope.
Absolutely. There's definite progress. The development of vitrification is, potentially a game changer. It's a way of cooling so fast that water doesn't have time to form ice crystals. It essentially turns into a kind of glassy solid.
Glassy solid. Oh.
Yeah, so it sidesteps that whole ice damage problem. And a really key moment was back in 2016. Researchers at a company called 21st Century Medicine, they managed to revive a rabbit brain after it was cryopreserved using vitrification. And the amazing thing was, its ultrastructure, the really fine details of the cells and connections, was almost perfectly preserved.
Wow, a rabbit brain preserved like that. That sounds like a massive step.
It was, undeniably.
But I guess even with something that amazing, getting from a rabbit brain to putting a whole human in stasis for, say, a century-long spaceflight, that's still a huge jump, still decades away.
Oh, absolutely. It's a proof of concept, a vital one. But scaling that up to a whole human safely... Yeah, that's still a long road ahead.
And that long road, that time factor, that's exactly why cryosleep becomes so appealing, almost necessary for thinking about interstellar travel, isn't it? It moves us from how hard is it to why we might desperately need it. I mean, you think about our current propulsion tech, getting to Proxima Centauri, the nearest star, just over 4 light years away. That's still decades, maybe even centuries of travel time, unless we suddenly invent warp drive or something equally fantastical.
Exactly. These journey times just dwarf human lifespans.
Okay.
And that's where cryosleep or something like it offers this potential workaround. If the crew is unconscious, hibernating. It slashes the need for consumables. Food, water, maybe even complex life support for air recycling over decades.
Mm.
It cuts down on the sheer mass you need to launch, and maybe just as importantly, it deals with the immense psychological burden.
Yeah, the isolation, the boredom,
Yeah.
the sheer mental strain of being cooped up for 50, 100 years. Unimaginable.
It really is. Staying sane would be a primary mission challenge.
So it feels very sci-fi, but is anyone actually working on this now? Is NASA or ESA, funding research into inducing these kinds of states?
Yes, they are. It's not quite the full cryosleep from the movies yet, but NASA and ESA have been collaborating with a company, SpaceWorks Enterprises. They're looking into what they call torpor-inducing transfer habitats.
Torpor-inducing. Okay, so like hibernation.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
The idea is to put astronauts into extended states of low metabolism, maybe using a mix of cooling, some sedation, maybe drugs to suppress metabolism. It actually borrows from a medical practice we already use, therapeutic hypothermia.
Oh, right. They use that for some trauma patients, don't they?
Yeah.
Lowering body temperature.
Exactly. Cooling the body down to maybe 32 degrees Celsius, something like that. It protects organs, reduces metabolic demands after injury. So the space agencies are looking at adapting that idea for weeks, maybe months, of lowered metabolic states for astronauts.
Okay, so not full freeze-drying yet, but a deep hibernation state. That seems maybe more achievable in the nearer term.
It does. It's seen as perhaps a stepping stone. While true, long-term cryosleep is still way out there, these deeper torpor states might be feasible sooner. It's building foundational knowledge.
A stepping stone. I like that. Okay, so let's take that stepping stone and leap forward a bit. What happens when this science, maybe in a more advanced form, starts interacting with whole societies, whole civilizations? This brings us to that idea you mentioned, the Cryo Accord. We're shifting gears here from the lab bench to, well, societal architecture almost.
It's a necessary shift in thinking, really. If cryosleep becomes viable for long durations, you have to consider the rules, the ethics, the societal impact. Imagine interstellar civilizations, maybe humans spread across multiple star systems, needing to agree on how this works. Your sources sketch out some fascinating areas this kind of accord would need to cover. Things like, how long can someone legally be kept in stasis?
Right. Are there limits? Who decides?
Exactly. And protocols for waking up. Who wakes up first after potentially centuries? Who's in charge of the ship or the colony?
And what about the person themselves, their memories, their consent?
Huge issues.
Yeah.
How do you guarantee memory integrity over such long periods? How do you really get informed consent for a journey where the destination society might be completely alien to the one you left?
Yeah, you might wake up and find everything you knew is just history, ancient history.
Precisely. Which leads to these incredibly complex ideas like cryo-inheritance. What happens to your property, your family lines, over centuries while you're asleep? Defining identity itself becomes tricky. Are you still the same person? Do you need some kind of post-time citizenship when you arrive in a future you didn't participate in creating?
Wow. Okay, that spins off so many questions. Like, do people in cryosleep keep their legal rights? Are they legally present or something else? Could a whole society change so much that returning travelers are basically refugees from the past?
It's entirely possible. And then there's that darker, maybe more pragmatic question you touched on. Could whole groups choose to sleep through predicted disasters? War, climate collapse, asteroid impacts.
Yeah.
Choosing time travel by biology as a survival mechanism.
Sleeping through the apocalypse, that's a heavy thought. This whole field, these cryoethics, it sounds like it pulls from everywhere.
It really does. It's a mashup of bioethics, obviously, but also deep political theory, questions of governance, rights, and even cosmopolitan law, thinking about universal principles across different potential societies.
So this cryo accord idea, it's almost like a constitution for time travel.
That's a good way to put it. One source made a really powerful comparison, suggesting the Cryo Accord could become space's equivalent of the Geneva Convention.
Wow.
Yeah, a foundational treaty designed specifically to protect human dignity when it's stretched across vast gulfs of time and space. It's about foresight.
Okay, that's the grand vision, the potential necessity. But let's bring it back down to Earth, or maybe back down to the spaceship floor. What are the immediate practical dangers? If we tried this tomorrow, even with the best tech we can imagine today, what are the big risks we can't ignore?
Oh, the risks are still immense, make no mistake. A huge one is radiation. Deep space is flooded with cosmic rays.
Yeah.
Shielding a sleeping, inactive body for decades or centuries is a massive challenge. DNA damage could accumulate significantly.
Right, you're just soaking it up the whole time.
Pretty much. Then there's the psychological side, even beyond the initial disorientation. Waking up after potentially hundreds of years, completely disconnected from your past. The potential for severe psychological trauma is very real. Profound grief, existential crisis.
Yeah, unimaginable loss, potentially.
And we still have major unknowns about the brain itself. What about subtle memory degradation over that long? Can you properly reset circadian rhythms after centuries of artificial stasis? What about maintaining the delicate neurochemical balance required for normal thought and emotion? The brain is just so sensitive.
So, radiation, psychological shock, potential brain weirdness, it's a daunting list. But clearly, the potential upsides must be huge to keep people pursuing this, right? What are those game-changing opportunities?
They are truly transformative, which is why the dream persists. The most obvious one is enabling multi-generational exploration. You could send missions to distant stars knowing the crew won't live out their lives just traveling. They arrive young, ready to explore or colonize.
Right, it bypasses the lifespan limit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It could facilitate colonization without the psychological burnout we talked about. You arrive relatively fresh, not after a lifetime of confinement. And then there's that really profound, almost philosophical opportunity. The ability to time shift across epochs, to actually witness the far future, maybe see how humanity evolves, how civilizations rise and fall across millennia. It's staggering to contemplate.
Being a literal time traveler, seeing the future firsthand. Okay, yeah, that's a powerful motivator. It makes you wonder if this becomes common, what kind of weird and wonderful social structures might pop up.
Oh, you can let your imagination run wild there. Your sources touch on some intriguing possibilities, maybe the formation of entire sleeper guilds groups dedicated to cryo travel, almost like nomadic pilgrims. Perhaps they wake up every few centuries on different worlds, checking in on humanity's branches, carrying news or knowledge across vast timescales.
Cosmic nomads, sleeping between worlds. Cool.
Or maybe more structured things like memory councils, institutions specifically set up to help integrate newly awakened sleepers into societies that might be drastically different, helping them understand the history they missed, finding their place. It suggests a society that values its past and its time-traveling members.
So cryosleep wouldn't just be a technology, it could become woven into the very fabric of society, maybe even spirituality.
It absolutely could. It might evolve beyond just being a tool. For some, maybe it's a deeply personal choice about how they experience time. For others, a powerful tool for exploration and survival. And maybe for some cultures, it takes on a kind of reverence, almost a sacred sacrament, where entering stasis is like stepping into the temple of time itself, placing your faith in the future.
Stepping into the temple of time. Wow. You know, we live our lives in what feels like the blink of a cosmic eye, but what if we could stretch that blink? Stretch it across light years, across centuries. It really does put things in perspective.
It does. And that concept, the Cryo Accord, it really feels like it represents this next huge threshold for humanity. It's not just about, better rockets or faster computers. It's potentially about the evolution of human identity itself, spread across time.
So when you boil it all down, this isn't just about the biology of sleep, is it?
No, not at all. At its core, it's about a monumental act of trust. Trusting the technology, yes, but more profoundly, trusting the future. Trusting whatever civilization exists centuries from now to hold you, to preserve you, while you sleep between the stars.
So here's something to really chew on. If we do master this, if cryosleep becomes real, maybe the ultimate journey isn't just to another star or galaxy. Maybe it's an inward journey, too. Into the nature of consciousness, of identity, how much of you remains after 1,000 years of sleep. And maybe the biggest question, what version of humanity will be there to greet us on the other side of that long, long dream?